All right. So, hi everyone. So I just noticed that I am missing the chapter 9 video, so I am re-recording this to ensure that the entire series is complete. That's why you may be wondering why this is sequentially out of order. So chapter 9 focuses on state, society, and the quest for salvation in India. So to give you a little bit of context, one of the most important to give you a little bit of background, two of the most important empires during this time were the Mauryan and Gupta empires that existed from 321 BCE to 500 CE. Now, little disclaimer: historically, India has never really been united. Most of its history, India has been disunited into a bunch of little principalities, states, and factions. However, even with this massive amount of division, India as a region has managed to produce some of history's most important inventions and inventions. So, before the Mauryan dynasty arose, India was invaded by foreign powers, specifically Persian Emperor Darius in 520 BCE when he conquered northwest India. As a result, you had the introduction of the Persian ruling system. However, this rule wouldn't last forever, as in 327, Alexander Macedon destroys the Persian Empire in India. However, his rule doesn't last very long, as Alexander has been driving his troops extremely far, and has extremely far from their home. This stretched their supply lines and made the soldiers really angry. As a result, his troops mutinied, and thus Alexander departed after only 2 years. This rapid evacuation of military forces created a political power vacuum. Now, the most significant remaining kingdom of Alexander's departure was the kingdom of Magadha. It was located in the central Ganges plain, and its economic strength rested mainly on agriculture and trade in the Ganges Valley and the Bay of Bengal, As a result, it dominated the surrounding regions in northeastern India. However, the Magadha kingdom would not last forever. It was overthrown by the Chandragupta Maurya in the Ganges. They also took advantage of the power vacuum left by Alexander and expanded the kingdom to create the first unified Indian empire. They made peace with Greeks on the border. Oh wait, sorry. Okay, never mind. Chandragupta Maurya is not the name of the empire. It's the name of the first emperor of the Mauryan Empire. Sorry for the confusion there. So he made peace with Greeks on his border after conquering some of the land. So it's like, hey, let's settle for peace on my own terms. He would found the Mauryan dynasty and the empire. Now, Chandragupta's government was based off of the works of his advisor Kautilya, who wrote the Arthashastra, a manual political statecraft. It was basically a more human-hearted precursor of Machiavelli's The Prince. Based on this advice, Chandragupta created a tightly centralized administration of spies, including prostitutes. According to legend, however, Chandragupta would retire to become a Jain monk and starves himself to death in the process. His grandson, Ashoka, would represent the high point of the Mauryan Empire during his reign of 268 to 232. He expanded the empire to include all of the subcontinent except for the south, and his positive rulership integrated Indian society. He was much better known as a ruler than a conqueror, having built roads and pillar edicts, roads and irrigation systems. His legacy is still felt in India today. His 4 lions are the national emblem of India, as well as the Buddhist wheel, or the Ashoka's wheel, is on the Indian flag. And this was the maximum extent of the Mauryan Empire. As we can see, it is just quite enormous, encompassing almost not only the entirety of the subcontinent, but also stretching to Persia, only being stopped by the Himalayan mountains. However, of course, empires don't last forever. There was an economic crisis following the death of Ashoka due to the high cost of bureaucracy and the military not being supported by tax revenue. As a result, the frequency was quite frequently devalued in order to pay salaries. Unfortunately, this doesn't help the empire's cause as regions begin to abandon the empire. By 185 BCE, the empire is completely gone, returning into its default setting of a shattered kaleidoscope of a bunch of different factions. And one of these factions was the Kingdom of Bactria in northwestern India. It was ruled by Greek-speaking descendants of Alexander's campaigns. In this kingdom, intense cultural activity accompanied active trade. Here you had examples of cultures mixing, for example, Buddha and a toga. Another one important one was Kushan, made up of mostly Central Asian nomads. Existed, unsurprisingly, in Central Asia and northern India around 1 to 300 CE. They maintained the Silk Road trade network. Now you have the rise of a second major empire, the Gupta dynasty based in Magadha, as well. It was founded by Chandragupta, no relation to Chandragupta Maurya, in 320 CE, nearly 500 years after the Maurya Empire fell. It was slightly smaller than the Mauryan Empire, however, and it had a highly decentralized leadership, very much different from the more tightly woven Mauryan Empire. Despite this, the Gupta dynasty would lay the foundations for studies in natural science and mathematics, creating a real golden age. Inventions include Hindi numerals and zero. And if you're wondering, wait, aren't they called Arabic numerals? Well, they're called Arabic numerals because the Arabs were the ones who introduced the Hindi numerals to the Europeans. However, the Guptas would also get killed, this time instead of domestic affairs, more by foreign invaders, specifically the White Huns. As a result, the empire collapses along regional fault lines, and smaller local kingdoms would dominate the scene until the Mughal Empire was founded in the 16th century. Now, the economy of ancient India originally started off as herding due to the Aryan migrants/invaders, depends on how you look at it, but out of these Aryans transitioned from herding to agriculture. Iron, invented after 1000 BCE, significantly assisted in the clearing of the Ganges area. Shudras, or semi-free serfs, were dispatched to work the land. By 600 BCE, you get many flourishing towns that developed into a dense network of small workshops. Trade was intense, capitalizing the trade routes across India. Now, you'd also had some really long-distance trade, as you had the Persian connection since Cyrus and Darius. Under the Persians enacted massive road-building projects, connecting their distant parts of the empire. And Alexander would extend the trade west to Macedon. You had trade routes for the Kush Mountains, the Silk Roads. Now, funny enough, the Kush Mountains are still very important to this day in the geopolitical sphere, as the only way to get through these mountains is through the Khyber Pass, which is in modern-day Pakistan. And as a result, the U.S. has to pay Pakistan billions of dollars to maintain their military access to the Khyber Pass in order to deliver equipment and troops to Afghanistan easily without having to transport it by air. Seasonal trade also expands as you had the spring-winter winds blowing, as you had the repetitive monsoon wind pattern. This allowed for trade from Southeast Asia to Persian Gulf and the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. You also had even some Roman trading settlements in southern India, as we can see with Roman coins being found there. Now, of course, we gotta talk about gender relations. Patriarchy was entrenched. This is almost like the de facto. If you need help writing essays, if you need writing essays about changing continuity, this is always a continuity. Child marriage was very common, with 8-year-old girls being betrothed to men in their 20s. And women were encouraged to remain in the private sphere, or the purdah. And of course, you had the sati, the practice where women would literally jump onto burning the funeral pyres of their dead husbands, supposedly because the woman could not take care of herself after the death after being widowed. Unfortunately, you had the caste system from Aryan times. At the top, you had the Brahmins, the priests at the top, the Kshatriyas, or the warriors, the aristocrats below them, and the Vaishyas and peasants and merchants, and below them the Shudras and the serfs. And this is a little picture of Brahmins from Bengal. Now, this caste system would become increasingly complex as time went on, as you had due to increasing economic diversification, challenging the simplistic caste system. You had jatis forming, which were basically subcastes that act as guilds or unions, so to speak. They only further enforced social order, and anyone who dared to defy the social caste order was forced into low-status employment. So, yeah, not great. Upward social mobility was possible for the Vaishyas and the Shudras. The wealth, however, this newly found wealth for these people allowed them to challenge Varna leaders or Brahmins for status. So now, social change generated resentment of the caste privilege. For example, Brahmins were exempt from taxation. And people just didn't really like the fact that the rituals are just so boring, so rigid, nothing interesting about them. So as a result, around 6th to 5th century BCE, new religious and philosophies challenged the status quo. Now, keep in mind, this is not Islam does not come up. Islam wouldn't be founded until, I would say, the 600s CE. So we're basically like over a millennia, over millennia away. You had Sharvakas, atheists and materialists, as well as Jains, Buddhists, and popular/devotional Hindus. Jainism was invented by Mahavira, who lived from 540 to 468 BCE. He abandoned privileged family life to lead an ascetic life. He promotes ideas based on the Upanishads, or commentaries on the Vedas. He emphasized selfless learning and concern for all beings. Now, Jains practiced a principle called ahimsa, which basically means extreme nonviolence. It said that all things have a soul, so as a result, some Jains would even go to the extent of sweeping the earth, straining water, and using slow moments to avoid killing insects, etc. Ahimsa would continue to inspire modern movements like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. However, now, Jainism was very popular due to the fact it rejected castes and jati distinctions, obviously being appealing to underprivileged groups. But the asceticism was a little too extreme for it to become a mass movement. There's still 2 to 4 million Jains known for honesty in business today. So, the main religious movement that would arise would be Buddhism. By 600 BCE, the Brahmins had become extremely powerful. Only they could perform the sacred ritual of Brahmanism or Vedic Hinduism, since only they could understand Sanskrit. It's kind of like how, it kind of reminds you, if you're familiar with Catholic Church history, this sounds like an old Catholic Church practice. Basically, before the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, the Catholic Church would conduct all Mass in Latin. No idea how to, no one except for the priests knew what they meant, so that's obviously a problem. Siddhartha Gautama wanted to limit priest power and give a more authentic spiritual experience. So Buddhism would arise with Siddhartha Gautama. We believe he lived around 563 to 483 BC-ish. Now, because these figures are so old and records are kind of spotty, we don't know for sure. And, he was originally born into a very wealthy family, but his family sheltered him from everything. But one night he escaped, and he figured out that, wow, life isn't actually so happy. He encountered age, sickness, death, and monastic life. As a result, this prompted Siddhartha to abandon his comfortable life to search for the truth. Gautama tried to search for enlightenment through intense meditation and extreme asceticism. After 49 days of meditation under a bo tree, he managed to finally achieve enlightenment. He had become the Buddha, the enlightened one. He begins teaching his new doctrine in 528 BCE. Now, his followers practiced asceticism, owning only robes and begging for food and food bowls. They lived a life of wandering, begging, and meditation, and established monastic communities. Buddhist doctrine revolved on the Four Noble Truths, that all life is suffering, suffering is caused by desire, removing desire removes suffering, and this may be done for the Noble Eightfold Path. Honestly, as a Star Wars fan, it kind of sounds like the Jedi Code. The Eightfold Path emphasized right views, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. The end result will be nirvana, a state of perfect spiritual independence. Taken together, this is Buddhist Dharma. Now, Buddhism was very popular basically dropped the dependence on Brahmins for ritual activities, kind of similar to how Protestant Christianity became popular because it doesn't explicitly require a dedicated priestly class to interpret the Bible. Rather, individual followers could actually interpret the teachings themselves. They also didn't recognize caste or jati status. This is also the same reason why Islam would become popular later on once it arrives to the subcontinent, because Islam dictates that all are equal in the eyes before Allah, just like how Judaism and Christianity emphasize all are equal in the eyes before God, and thus caste in these religions had no meaning. It also was the philosophy of moderation in the middle way, easier than Jainism, thus appealing to merchants in the worldly. It also smartly used pilgrimage sites, holy shrines, and stupas or holding relics to gain appeal. Monasteries became important institutions in Indian society, evangelizing and raising money. They also used vernacular language, Pali, not Sanskrit. If you're wondering, wow, this also draws parallels to why Protestant Christianity was more popular than Catholicism during the Protestant Reformation, because Protestants allowed the use of vernacular, whereas the Catholic Church emphasized the use of Latin. Yeah, it's really fun making all these historical connections with Europe. Yeah, like I said, parallels of Luther. And Nalanda was a Buddhist monastery. It was also kind of like a university, so to speak. With Buddhism, Hindu texts, philosophy, astronomy, medicine. So it was So it's kind of almost like a cross-discipline school. It would peak at the end of the Gupta dynasty and help spread Indian thought, like the mathematical number zero. Now this Nalanda is being rebuilt. Now, Buddhism will get a major boost with Emperor Ashoka, who personally converted to Buddhism after being saddened by the violence of his war of Kalinga. He banned animal sacrifices and mandated vegetarianism at the court. He also provided material support for Buddhist institutions and missionary activities. Now, of course, he also used religion to unify their realm and legitimize their rule. It's kind of like how Constantine used Christianity, as well as the fact that many other monarchs would use Christianity to invoke to buttress the rule, like the Russian Tsars, the Orthodox Christian Church, the English monarchs in the Anglican Church, the Spanish and French monarchs in the Catholic Church, yada yada yada. The Ecumenids, and especially Sassanids with Zoroastrianism, Guptas with devotion to Hinduism, Ismail I with Shiism, the Sultan of Malacca and the Mali Emperor of Islam, Henry VIII, like I said, Henry IV with Catholicism, and the Cold War with the whole idea of the whole principle of Judeo-Christianity, again in contrast to the godless communism of the Soviet Union. Now, Buddhist thought begins to change around 3rd century BCE to 1st century CE. As a result, these changes said that Buddha was considered divine and begins instituting the idea of bodhisattvas, or those who are enlightened yet remain on earth to help others become enlightened themselves, kind of like saints in the Catholic Church. They also said charitable donations to monasteries regarded as pious activity. Kind of sounds like the Catholic Church, but like in the run-up to the Protestant Reformation. Yeah, sounds a little like indulgences. Now, as a result of the religion's spread in time, the religion begins splitting, kind of like how Christianity began to split, as well as Islam. There were two main forms emerged. Hinayana, or the lesser vehicle, also known as Theravada, was the earlier, more demanding version. It was and still is popular in Ceylon, Burma, and Thailand. Then you had Mahayana, or the greater vehicle, the newer development, more accessible, being popular in India, China, Japan, Korea, and Central Asia. It allowed an active detachment and thus an easier life. Hinduism continues to play a major role, as is the chief religion of India since 600 CE. It has no founder, however, instead arising from a motley of Aryan and Dravidian beliefs. It's as much as a way of life as a religion, and varies significantly from region to region. Hinduism had thousands of personal gods, all part of this impersonal supreme force known as Brahman. There was, however, a trinity of key gods who are believed to have multiple incarnations, Brahma being the creator, Vishnu being the preserver, and Shiva being the destroyer. Hinduism considers its holy text to be the Vedas, or contain the things that contain in texts that contain in Sanskrit that contain eternal truths, Upanishads or commentaries on the Vedas, and semi-sacred epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana. The Bhagavad Gita is a part of this. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the important texts is part of the Mahabharata. It tells a story of conversion between conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, an incarnation of Vishnu. Its main topic revolves on dharma or caste duty. Hinduism basically said that each person has an ancestral self called an Atman. Atman is equal to Brahman. There is no distinction between creator and creation. The religion emphasizes non-violence, as it believes that all is part of Brahman, tolerance, and acceptance. The goal of Hinduism is to reunite with Brahman and moksha after escaping samsara with like karma. Hinduism would gradually replace and absorb Buddhism in India. Gupta dynasty leaders extended considerable support. Meanwhile, Buddhism stops marketing itself and fades away from after 1000 CE in India. And thank you for watching.